I don't need a mic. I'll take a handheld. I'll take a handset. I'll do whatever I need to do to get this message out to you this morning. So I'm ready to go. Are y'all excited that it's Super Bowl Sunday? Y'all pretty pumped? Right? Okay, I'm excited. If you know me, I love football. Like, I am excited. Super Bowl Sunday, Rams, Patriots. How many people want the Rams to win? Huh? Okay, yeah, like just like anyone but the Patriots, please. Okay, what about Patriots? We got any Patriots fans? Hey, all right. We got like 6 of us, okay? I love the Super Bowl. I love Super Bowl Sunday. There's this excitement, and it's not just the commercials. Like, it's the this is it, man. Like, your season is on the line, and this is my favorite thing to look for, is that unlikely people show up in these situations to win the games. Like, I'm so excited tonight to find out who the hero is going to be. Like, who's going to be the guy that seals the deal for his team, because this is when they show up. This is when it happens. Like, and I'll give you an example. If we go back to Super Bowl 46, you got Mario Manningham's sideline catch for the Giants against the Patriots. That guy was drafted in the 3rd round. Super Bowl 37, we've got the Buccaneers. Dexter Jackson gets 2 interceptions against the Raiders. He was drafted in the 4th round. Rod Martin from Los Angeles City College gets a Super Bowl record 3 interceptions in Super Bowl 15 for the Raiders to win. And I could go on and on. We've got Mike Jones, right? Do y'all remember Tennessee Titans, Rams? Mike Jones gets that tackle at the 1-yard line to save the game in Super Bowl 34. Allows Kurt Warner to win the Super Bowl. We've got Timmy Smith rushing for 200 yards in Super Bowl 22. David Tyree, helmet catch. Kurt Warner, the greatest undrafted player of all times. And, of course, we've got Nick Foles last year, right? Goes from backup to hero in Philly. And then, of course, well, guys, who could forget about this?
Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Malcolm Butler, who almost made the phenomenal play that wound up in Purse's arms. There are flags on the field for a celebration. Amazing. Butler, a rookie free agent out of West Alabama.
A rookie free agent out of West Alabama. Did you catch that at the end? So unlikely, right? A rookie free agent out of West Alabama. And, of course, let's not forget the GOAT, Tom Brady, from Michigan, now going for his 6th Super Bowl, which matches the round that he got drafted in. 6th round, the greatest of all time, coming out of the 6th round. It seems like when big games, when big life situations, when dramatic moments start happening, that's when the unlikely hero shows up. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. I'm going to share a scripture from Joshua chapter 2. And would you just do me a favor? Can we stand in honor of God's word this morning and just really lean in for what God has for us? Again, we're at Joshua chapter 2. It's going to be up on the side screens. It says, "Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim." Now, you want to be careful when reading this scripture and you get to the word Shittim. That is a long I. Shittim. All right? "Go look over the land," he said, "especially Jericho." So they went and they entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. Obviously, there was nothing else left on Airbnb, so they went to Rahab's place. Verse 2, "The king of Jericho was told, 'Look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land.' So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, 'Bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land.' But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them." Now, one thing that I will say about Rahab's profession is that she knows how to have discretion. She knows how to hide men. This is one thing she's probably done before. And she says, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them." This is all a lie. Right? Rahab brings these 2 men into her house. She hides them, and now she is lying, saying they have left. So you have a lying prostitute that God is using for his purpose. Put that in your theological pipe and smoke it. Vape that one time, okay? Verse 6, but she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax. Again, she's probably done this before. She had laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan. And as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, this is really important, she went up to the roof and she says to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. This is the same army that the Israelites were afraid of 40 years earlier. So the same enemy that they were afraid of 40 years earlier, they're now finding out was scared of them the whole time. See, there's some things in your life that you're not running towards. There's some things that you've decided to give up on that God's already dealt with. God's already defeated what's in front of you, and you're standing still, and you need to press on. You need to move forward. And it picks up in verse 10. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea. Again, this is 4 decades ago. They're still talking about it. For you, when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. And when we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Will you turn to your neighbor and just say it's game time? Can you just say that this morning? Say it's game time. I'd like to preach to you this morning from a message I've titled Unlikely Hero. Unlikely Hero. You can go ahead and be seated. Thank you so much. You know, sometimes you have to move past things and move past what people have called you in your life and begin looking at yourself a little differently. Begin looking at yourself based on what God has already said about you. And that's essentially what God told Joshua. After Moses left, God says to Joshua that it's a new day, and you're the leader that I've chosen and appointed to lead these people into the promise that I promised their ancestors many years ago. And so Joshua chapter 1, God reminds Joshua of his reputation. Not the reputation of Joshua, but the reputation of Jehovah. And so basically what God was doing is he was setting Joshua up to where whenever he would come across trouble, whenever he would meet resistance, whenever he would come up to a barrier, he would be reminded that God, Jehovah, God, he is my reputation. And so, much like the unlikely Super Bowl heroes we talked about a minute ago, God uses people that are obscure and unknown to further his purpose here on earth. And we see this all throughout the Bible. You've got David, right? David, a man after God's own heart, king of Israel. He was found out in a field, right? Really, really prestigious. You have Abraham, too old by our standards to have children. God says, you don't understand what you want to do with flesh and might, I bring out in spirit. And so God blesses Abraham with children, and God's reputation is just what we need to be basing our faith on, not our own reputation. We spend so many times trying to make sure like people look at us a certain way. You know what I'm talking about? Social media, hello. But God's really the only one that we should be concerned about. He's the only one that even knows us truly to ourselves. He knows who we truly are. So God doesn't concern himself with how many followers you have. He wants to know about your faith. How much faith do you have? And it's funny, you know, sometimes I can rub people the wrong way in a conversation. Don't laugh too hard, because I don't always try to defend myself when there are opposing opinions. Like if I already know that what I'm doing and where I'm headed is towards a place that God has positioned me, then I don't really feel the need to answer or have an explanation and reason with anyone that's questioning and really doesn't know me or my mission or my purpose or what God has for me, or really any interest in getting to know any of those things, because my eyes are fixed on him, and so I'm going to go where my eyes are fixed on. There's really no time for anything else. And so if you're caught up in wondering what others think of you or what others may think of you, then you might be way too wrapped up in your own ego. You need to focus on protecting your integrity and understand that God will handle your reputation. We live in a culture that wants reputation with no repetition. They want clout with no consistency. And, relationship and repetition is really the only thing your reputation's built on in the first place. So you need to focus your life on people that know you well and what God says about you. So back to our scripture, we have Joshua sending in 2 spies, and he's learned from Moses. See, when Moses sent in spies several decades prior, he sent in 12 spies, and 10 came back with a report out of fear. And Joshua was one of those spies. But when Joshua returned, he actually said, if God is with us, then we cannot fail. So you have prior 10 of 12 saying fear, Joshua saying let's go in. And so now Joshua has learned from that, sends in 2 spies. That way there's not too many opinions. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not in middle school anymore. Like, I don't need too many opinions. Are you one of those people that ask everyone's opinion? Like, do you call all your friends to find out what they would do if they were you? Or do you just have a few key people that you trust that are wise to talk you through some things? It's important that you don't seek everyone's advice on everything, but just a wise person's advice on a few things. And let's be honest, by the time you've called the third person, you're really just looking for affirmation and attention at that point anyway, right? When you get too many opinions, how can you tell which voice is God's voice? Those of you that know me well know I love cars, right? I've talked about this before. I feel like every time I preach, I'm like, I love cars. Did you know that? I really love cars. I love automobiles, and so a lot of people know that I know a little bit about that, and so they'll call me and ask me my opinion on some things, and that usually goes one of two ways. I'll get a phone call from somebody that'll be like, hey man, I was driving down the road today and I saw this beautiful da-da-da-da-da. I really like it. I think I'm going to get it. How awesome is that? And they're just looking for me to go, that sounds great, man. Congratulations. Happy for you. Yep, awesome. Yep, I love it in white too. Great job. But then there's the other guy. Then there's the guy that calls and says, hey man, so I'm looking at this da-da-da-da, and I kind of like it, but my boss, he says that it's not really that good of a car. But then this other guy I work with, he said he drove one back in 2007. He said he really liked it. But my sister thinks it kind of looks feminine, like a girl's car, so I think I can't get it in white. But then I also like this other. What do you think, man? If you were me, what would you do? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to be paying for it, so let's get that out of the way. So I don't care, right? I'm not going to be paying for it. I'm not going to be driving in it. I'm not going to be doing anything. You need to make sure that you're happy. Don't be calling and asking everybody's opinion. So what are you looking for here? Are you looking for just some affirmation, some attention? Do you really want my advice? And I just wonder how many people would have said that they're not cool with going into the house of a prostitute. I mean, if he would have sent 12 spies, that conversation might have got interesting. See, this story couldn't have gone any other way. So they go in and they stay at Rahab's house. Rahab, the prostitute. Understand, God uses who he wants to use. We worship a sovereign God. He uses who he wants to use. And isn't it interesting that God, who has a spotless reputation, when he gets ready to bring his people into the promise, he uses a woman with not such a clean record. Technically, Rahab was an enemy of Israel. But God used that enemy to show them who they were. God used that enemy to show them who they were. This is when the message gets really good. Pay attention. She said, I know who you are, and I know that God has given you the victory. Is it possible that your enemy knows more about you than you do? Is it possible that that's why he's been fighting you and lying to you? Is that possible? See, sometimes the trial that we're going through is a testament to the power that lives within us. Sometimes the trial that we're going through is a testament to the power that lives within us. Sometimes the trial that we're going through is a testament to the power that lives within us. The devil doesn't waste bullets, so if he's leaving you alone, well then, are you worth fighting for? God used their enemy to show them who they were. And this is what I love so much about sports, because this is when people rise to the occasion. You don't know what you're capable of until someone is on the other side saying, you can't do it. You don't know what you're capable of until you line up on the field and say, you can't beat me. Like, I'm a pretty fast runner, right? Like, I run pretty fast. I'm not as fast as I used to be, but I can run pretty fast. But I'll guarantee you this, I'm always going to run faster if you're like, hey, let's race, and you line up next to me. I'm always going to run faster if you say, I bet you can't run it in this time. I'm always going to try and rise to the occasion. This is why heroes show up when the moment gets real. God used their struggle to confirm his word, and it's just crazy how we've set up this myth in our head that God's promises will always look a certain way, and as our faith increases, our problems will obviously decrease, right? And we'll get like more comfortable in life, but that's not how it works. Like if we go look at the story of Job, we see the devil going through the earth and looking for someone he could mess with. And when the devil presented himself before God, before the throne of God, because understand, the devil's not more powerful than God. The devil is not equal power of God. That God has to allow the devil to do what the devil wants to do. So the devil goes to God and says, who can I mess with? And then God says, well, have you considered my servant Job? And let me just say this, whatever list that Job's on, like however holy you have to live to be like on that list, I just want to live like right there. Like I just want to be like, good for Job, but can I just like sneak in right underneath Job? Like he says, have you thought about messing with Job? Because he's my dude. And so the devil messes with Job, takes away pretty much all he has, his kids, his possessions. He puts death all around him, but Job doesn't waver. None of that causes Job to waver. And then the devil says, well, yeah, but if you let me hurt him, let me hurt him and then he'll curse you. And God says, look, man, you can hurt him. Don't kill him. Don't kill him, but go ahead. You can hurt him. And so after Job survived all of that, losing his income, his family, his business, I mean, the only thing he had left was his wife. And I'll be honest with you, he probably wished the devil would have gone ahead and knocked that one on out, all right, because she was not too great in that situation. Through everything, Job wouldn't curse God. And so at the end of the book, we see that God blesses Job double. And I understand, I don't think that that's the point of the story. I don't think the point is for you to understand, oh, if I lose my children, I'm going to get double. It doesn't work. I think the purpose is to see that heaven knows about us. Like heaven knows what we're going through. Heaven addressed Job. He knew about Job, and I think that should teach us that whatever we're going through, whatever kind of trouble we're experiencing, God's prepared us for it. Because we are children of God. God would not let his children go through something that they are not prepared for. And so heaven knows about us. Heaven knows what we're struggling with, what we're going through. And God says, have you considered my servant Job? Because I know about him. Speaking on Sundays for me has been exciting, but you guys have kind of only seen the back end of that story. 10 years ago, I wasn't even in church. And 5 years ago, I was kind of really just finding my place. And, I love playing music, and that's been my thing. And I grew up saying, number one, I'd never work at a church, and then I started working at a church. And then I said, well, I'll never, not full-time. And then I started doing it full-time. And then I was like, well, I'd never want to be in a position of leadership, man. Those guys take all the flack. So then I started being put in positions of leadership. And then I was like, well, okay, but I never want to speak on Sunday mornings. Like, there's way too much pressure on that. And then God started opening up doors and opportunities for me to speak. So now I'm like, I'll never make, $10 million. And so I'm just, hey, I'm just testing the water. I'm just seeing if it's maybe possible. But my point is, there's a lot of times where, there's a lot going on a Sunday morning. You guys see, we've got worship team. We've got, we have new light fixtures that we had to patch into the lighting board this week, and that took some time. There's a lot going on, right? And so there's times that I'm like, man, do I have enough content? Do I have enough time this week? Can I really get through this? And then I'm reminded in that story in Job, man, God knows. He knows you. He knows what you're struggling with. He knows what you're going through. And he would never position you in a place where you cannot fulfill the purpose that he's laid out for you. See, your perspective matters. And are you going into trials thinking God hates you and he's picking on you? Or are you thinking that heaven knows you've got this? One of the things I love about the Patriots this year is their mindset. And if you don't like the Patriots, just put another team there and keep listening. All right? They've really taken on this whole persona that they're not talented, that they're too old. And obviously, I think Tom Brady's like 84. And so there's this clip that came out of the Patriots playing the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. 2 minutes and 3 seconds left on the clock, 3 timeouts. You guys know it's way too much time for Tom Brady. And he comes into the huddle, and there's 10 guys looking at him for the play call. And these 10 guys are basically saying, man, is this our last game? I mean, we're down 4. I mean, is this it? We're on the road. It's loud. And they're all looking to this guy. They're all looking to this one guy. And he comes in and he says, hey, it's okay. We've got this. I'm the baddest man on the planet. And then he calls the play. He said some other words. Now, that may give you this, oh, well, what an arrogant, yeah, okay. Maybe. But that's exactly what his team needed to hear right then. I'm the baddest man on the planet. That's what they needed. Perspective, mindset matters. There's another video that came out in that game where Julian Edelman comes to the sidelines and looks at Tom Brady and says, you're too old. You're too old. And he said some other things. Mindset, perspective, rising to the occasion. If the devil isn't messing with you, then maybe he doesn't even know you're here, because, see, trouble accompanies God's presence, and he is an ever-present help in the time of trouble. So if you are in trouble, you are in, let's try it again. So if you are in trouble, you are in God. There you go. If you are in trouble, you are in God. And we think that if God is with us, then he must be working to fix our problem, but most of the time he's working on shifting your perspective while you work through the problem, so that you'll have a new way to see your problems. So they go to the house of Rahab the prostitute, and I really wouldn't build an entire Super Bowl Sunday sermon around Rahab if this was the only time that she was mentioned. But check this out. Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was... Well, that can't be right, because this is where they list the genealogy of Jesus. Hold on, let me read that again. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. So let me get this right. In order to get to Jesus, you have to go through Rahab? So in order to get to the Son of God, you have to go through a lying prostitute? God works through who he wants to work through. And all things work together for God's glory. Stop being so stuck up and putting people into boxes and categories. Stop acting like you don't have issues. Stop giving grace to people that only sin like you do. God uses who he wants to use. And really, we should all be glad that Rahab's name is in this scripture, because that should give hope for us. Like, if Rahab made it, maybe I can too, right? By faith. By faith. By the way, if you were anything like me, you probably grew up in a church that talked about the opposite of faith being doubt. But I don't see that in the Bible. I don't see that in the Bible anywhere. What I see is the opposite of faith being sight and certainty and self-sufficiency. So having faith doesn't mean that you can't have doubt. It doesn't mean that you don't have questions sometimes. It means that in spite of what is in front of me, I am choosing to trust God who has brought me this far. And if he hasn't failed me yet, then why would I not press forward on the journey that he's laid out for me? Hebrews 11, verse 29. By faith, everybody say by faith. Come on, y'all can do better than that. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. By faith, Nice. The walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them for 7 days. Remember, we talked about this last week. We said the power, right? The power was in the step, not in the shout. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets. So let me get this straight. You don't have time to talk about David, the greatest king ever of Israel, a man after God's own heart. But you got time to talk about Rahab? And that's where I just feel like God's saying to us, I look at people differently than you do. I'm not on the same level as you. God is looking at your faith. And then for a third time, we see Rahab mentioned in James chapter 2, verse 25. It says, in the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? She's a hero, man. An unlikely hero, sure, but a hero. And my favorite thing about this entire story, if you haven't heard anything I've said, please hear this. Look at the timing that God used Rahab. Notice that God didn't change Rahab before using her. Do you see this? God didn't change Rahab before using her. I think so many times we think God can't use us because we have a problem, or we can't seem to get through something, or God can't use us because of our past, or God can't use us because of what we looked at on our phone a couple hours ago or last night. Now, I'm not excusing bad behavior, but what I'm saying is that God's love is not the reward for change. It is the resource by which we are changed. We'll say that again. God's love is not the reward for change. It is the resource by which we are changed. Rahab won it for Israel. Rahab is the Israel team hero, and she was called the enemy, the prostitute, the harlot, but the Bible addresses her as the righteous. She is the unlikely hero of Israel. When the game was on the line, the most unlikely of people stepped up. And Joshua and the nation of Israel goes on to take Jericho, and they set the precedent for who we are this day as God's chosen people. And so this morning, I just challenge you, take a look at your perspective on life. Take a look at your perspective on trials and troubles that come your way. Heaven knows about you, and God's presence is with you. And Rahab became the unlikely hero for the nation of Israel. But who can you become the unlikely hero for? Who can you become the unlikely hero for? Whose life can you change by sharing the gospel with them? What situation can you walk into this week and claim a victory and be a winner on behalf of Jesus? I mean, guys, be the GOAT, man. Be the greatest of all time when it comes to this stuff. That's what we should be striving for. Rise to the occasion. Oh, I don't like my neighbors. Rise to the occasion. Well, I don't like my coworkers. Rise to the occasion. Well, I don't like my family. Well, I get it. But rise to the occasion. This should be the finest hour for Christians. We rise to the occasion. Unlikely? Sure. But we rise. We step up. Understand that God has never created a life that He didn't intend to use. So this week, go and be a hero.